right, we're going. Hi, my name is Kevin Inouye, and I am currently Assistant Professor of Movement, Acting, and Stage Combat at Case Western Reserve here in Cleveland, Ohio. So I want to talk about specifically the movement part of that, although stage combat can fall within that as well sometimes. I've taught for a range of BA, BFA, MFA programs in the last 10 years or so, a little more. And one of the things that I regularly run into is a lack of understanding about what movement instruction is, what it can be, what it should be, what you want it to be. And I think there's a general consensus in higher education in the last couple of decades that these specialties belong within theater instruction, whether it's movement, whether it's voice and speech, things like that. But often there's only one specialist in that field at that institution. And that makes it really hard sometimes to have those curricular conversations with your colleagues, to have an interview as a part of a search committee if you're looking to hire a movement person, to have those conversations if you are a student trying to figure out, is this program right for me? Is it going to give me what I need to be a better performer and to do the things that I want to do down the road? So I want to talk a little bit about this as a sort of learning outcomes thing, because this is what a lot of programs and especially deans are into right now as we develop our syllabi. What are the learning outcomes of movement? Now, I've had conversations with program directors, with chairs, with other faculty that ran the gamut from, you're the subject area expert, you do what you want to do, you tell me, to, well, we just want our students to have, increased endurance and strength and flexibility, and some of them maybe lose some weight. I hear that. And that kind of relegates it essentially to a PE credit, right? While there are things to be said for that, and those are certainly useful skills for any performer, I suppose, to have, it's really not specific to performance. And I'm not sure it really belongs as something to be labeled as theater education. Yes, all life experience can help you as an actor. That's not the point. How are we specifically and intentionally training performers with this? While I know students who've actually made pretty good side hustles out of their credentials in physical training or yoga or martial arts or dance, that doesn't make it theater training. I know programs that have had modern dance or Tai Chi or yoga as a part of their movement requirement, and it's better than nothing. Stanislavski, and I don't know where the Benedetti translation is, but talks about how his students, he just took for granted that they were concurrently, as a part of actor training, also taking gymnastics and fencing, although he did also bring in a movement teacher, Sinova, to his imaginary class. Or Michael Chekhov's delving into eurythmy as a way to get some of those same benefits for his students, training in a movement system. Although his is already pretty physical to begin with. And then there's approaches like that of Jerzy Grotowski. Grotowski is probably best known in the US through the work of Stephen Wang and his excellent books. But it's a very physical approach. And yes, you are learning to do headstands and handstands and dive rolls. And that's a part of, yes, it can feel like PE, but the difference is that Grotowski is using it intentionally and deliberately as a way to break down the barriers that are holding you back as a performer. All the stupid stuff in your head, you just can't keep it up because you're exhausted. And also you're more home in your body. You've got a stronger core, a better presence with that. All of that happens. But it's a means to an end. And it's not just, we want actors who can go out there and do circus skills on stage. It's not just prep for the new Pippin. So let's start by looking at some of the possible learning outcomes, and then talk about some of the common practitioners that work on those, and then we'll kind of close it off. All right? So one of the first things you usually hear is this idea of sort of foundational presence, right? Can your actors just stand there without nervously fidgeting with their fingers, putting their hands in their pockets, cross their arms? Do they know what to do with their hands? Can they act natural? Do they have weird habits, weird postural things? Are they too used to typing on papers like this, and so they walk around like this all the time? Or locking their knees is a big pet peeve of mine. I call it like putting on the parking brake. shifting their weight, these sort of comfort gestures, all the stuff that students may not be aware that they're doing. And this is interesting because it's working not on a character or a performance, but it's about working on the raw materials. It is refining the raw materials to be able to produce better products later. And so probably the most well-known within theater training of this would be Alexander Technique. Alexander Technique is a very specific, often hands-on approach to help fix posture and help you in how you sit, how you stand. People use it to help with chronic pain issues as well and things like that. But for actors, usually it's about developing that sense of poise, right? Which is especially important if you're doing period work, because it's very different from the modern way of being, right? There are some challenges where, because it's often a very hands-on approach, and it might be about, feel the pressure in the back of your head here, I want you to press into my hand with the small of your back. Some of that stuff, if you're not careful, can bump up against new initiatives within a lot of our theater departments and theaters to avoid instructional touch, and at the very least be more consent-based about how we do it. So it's certainly possible to make those adjustments, but if you have someone who's an old school Alexander teacher, they may sometimes not think about that because that's not their training. But it is a great way to sort of build that stature if that's what you want. There are some complaints, though, that from some that it's a little culturally elitist. That some people don't like being told this is how you should do it. Some people love that. They're like, just tell me what to do, tell me the answer. A more sort of free-form approach might be that of the Feldenkrais method. That kind of somatic body awareness. It doesn't tell you this is what you should do, or what you should feel, what you should be. It tells you to explore and find what is. What is that today? Oh, you feel how that moves? That's a little different, huh? What about on the other side? And if it's not symmetrical, okay, that's interesting. Not wrong, just interesting. What do you want to do about it? The challenge I have with Feldenkrais is that often the work itself is super gentle. And some people, especially young people in their prime, a lot of our acting students, feel like it's not work, right? It's not tradecraft. They're not doing enough. Like, it feels like, okay, it's the stereotypes about theater training that you just roll around on the floor and make like fluffy sounds and breathe. And they want to feel like they're doing something. So that may be one reason why it's caught on a little bit more often with older people who are trying to deal with chronic pain issues or lack of mobility or problems, things not working like they should, as opposed to young people who are in their prime. But I do like some things, like, for example, the way that they refer to acture as the subject rather than posture, the idea that it's about how you move and what you do rather than just what you are. Right, so that's something that I geek out over as a movement person, semantically. Looking at my notes here. Right, Gutowski, body awareness, somatics. Yeah, there's this great quote that from Irwin Shaw's play, and producer Martin Gable probably is the first person to say it. Don't just do something, stand there. Right, and that's I think a great way to think about theatrical presence, right? That you don't have to do things, that if you just be, but you do that well enough, that can be very compelling and very powerful. The opposite of Feldenkrais might be something like the work of Tadashi Suzuki. Tadashi Suzuki was a Japanese practitioner who combined traditional kabuki training and Japanese martial arts with some of the Western ideas of actor training. And his approach tends to be very regimented. It does have a lot of structure, and you have students, stomping down the classroom in lines in unison with somebody else banging a bamboo pole on the floor to mark out the cadence and calling out numbers in Japanese. It can almost feel like actor boot camp sometimes, as opposed to Feldenkrais, which feels more like a hippie arts retreat sometimes. So a lot of this is going to be about fit, right? It's not that one is better or worse than the other. It's about finding what's right for you, for your program, for your students. So it's like casting. It's not, oh, this is the ultimate good actor and that person is 3 steps down as an actor skill. It's, is that person right for this role, right? Is the system right for this program? There are other other ways that we can get at this. One of the other systems that is very popular in American theater training is the work of Lecoq, and probably his most famous is element is the neutral mask. This is one made by my friend and mentor Jonathan Becker, theatermasks.com. The neutral mask unit is an interesting provocation to our students, right? It's a challenge. It gives them an impossible task of, first of all, achieving a character, if you want to call it that, with no past, no present, no past, no future, but only in the present. And so through that, finding what is essentially human, the poetic essence of human, and nothing else, no character, no backstory, no motivation. So again, that foundational, we're working on the raw materials, not making any choices yet. And that's an impossible task, even before you add the mind elements of the essential journey of the neutral mask, which include, you're floating in the ocean, you're climbing a mountain, you're falling down the other end. It's stuff you can't literally do. So you have to find the poetic essence of it. And that's frustrating for some students because you can't do it perfectly. And then you also add on the layer of the pedagogical mandate from Lecoq that you not model what to do. It's very specific. Don't just show the students what to do and have them imitate you. Not for neutral mask anyway. Sure, mime, we can do that. Neutral mask, no. And that's hard because a lot of our students grew up in a system that is just, tell me what I need to do to get an A. Where's the study guide? Which bubble do I fill in? And this is not that. This is designed to make you fail over and over and over again. And you'd say, oh, nope, wrong, that sucks. Show me something else? Okay, good, that sucks a little less. Find me something else. And that process can be demoralizing and challenging. And I find often one of the actual benefits of the Lecoq work, like for me as a performer when I went through it, or for some of my students, is that it makes you sort of get over that need to control and understand everything intellectually. That we might actually have to discover some things physically through doing first, rather than intellectually through understanding and deciding and then doing as a byproduct of that. It's almost like how Shakespeare has his characters think out loud rather than think first and then speak, the way most modern characters might. So that's a challenge. But I do think it can be a very rewarding one. And then, yes, if you're going the full curriculum, it goes from there into, animals and working with music and mime and commedia dell'arte and clown, things like that. Which brings us a little bit into the realm of theatrical performance and the idea that there are genres of physical performance theater. There's companies that you might be aware of, like Cinetic Theater Company in Washington, D.C., or Push Movement Company. There's a number of companies that do specifically mask work or puppetry stuff. There's some great shows out there for that. Frantic Assembly in the UK, for anybody who's over the other side of the pond watching this. And as well as specific physical moments. I think we all understand how, yes, dance training can help with the dance break in the musical, or stage combat training can help with the fight scene, or period movement can help with your Restoration era farce and that fop character or whatever. So I'm going to kind of skip over that because I think it's kind of obvious. But I do think it's worth saying, talking a little bit about the movement genres as a possible part of a curriculum. In part because you need to make a choice if you're responsible for the movement training in your program. Are we training in specific genres because we want our students to do that work, or because it's a means to an end, right? I mean, things like mime, a lot of people don't like mimes. A lot of people don't like clowns. And I don't expect students in my classes to go out and make a living as a mime or necessarily to do a lot of mask work or anything like that. But sometimes we teach it because our students learn things through that process. And so the idea that by making someone perform in a full face mask non-verbally, they learn to use their body more intelligently and use other expressive tools than the ones they've been able to fall back on their whole career, that is of value. Devising physical theater, finding ways to have non-verbal acting beats that we sometimes forget about when we start with a script and we're scoring a script, that there can be non-verbal beats, and those can be the most interesting ones. I think a lot of the stuff that we get in mime and mask especially can really help with that. Things like commedia dell'arte, it's a little bit dated and problematic in some of the stereotypes that it uses based on historical context. But, it can be a fun way to get people into more creative and theatrical use of their bodies and to stop being so darn literal, and embrace stock characters. Not everything has to be a character with a unique backstory that has never been done before. It's okay. You can find those types. And it develops that vocabulary as well of like, oh, that person's a bit of a capitano. Excuse me. So there are certainly ways that you can use some of this as training for naturalistic performance as well. Which brings me to the next category, which I want to talk about, which is this idea of sort of the outside-in approach. Because that's another thing I've been told sometimes by search committees that they want from the movement person is we just want someone who will give us sort of an outside-in approach to acting. And certainly a lot of these techniques can do that. One of the things that acting training can do is give you a vocabulary for things, right? Any acting method will have a vocabulary. So when we get into movement, some of them are highly dependent on that, and that actually is the centerpiece of the training and what they're best known for. So things like Laban movement analysis. You have this incredibly complex list of options of how you might describe what someone does or how they do it, whether to be able to notate or describe or proscribe an action, or if you're wanting to score your script and make choices about, in this moment, I'm going to be ringing a little bit and then I'm going to push and lift. Michael Chekhov does very similar things with his movement qualities, and then more specifically with psychological gesture, probably his most famous tool, which I find is a great way of translating his teacher, Stanislavski's, objective obstacle tactic work into, but what does it look like? What does it feel like? So that it's not just your actor's thesaurus, interesting sounding word. Okay, but what does that really mean? How do you turn that into a playable action? So for me, I like to put some of these together into a Margolis method as well. Shoot, I almost forgot that. Margolis method also is a very specific vocabulary set of metaphorical physical grammar and descriptors of actions and elastics and springs and different ways that you can visualize what your body is doing and make that an acting moment and an acting beat and something that is underlying the words that you speak. Carey talks about it as making the invisible visible, that's one of our main goals as an actor. Some people really latch onto this, and it works well with their smart actor approach that they can, there's this, and I can do that, and I can do that. That bag of tricks, the idea that you can latch onto things rather than the abstract nature of neutral mask or Krotelsky or where the via negativa learning by removal thing. Some people like being able to accumulate. Ravens, ooh, that's shiny, I'll take that. But I will say that there are some times when some people fall into a trap with that because it's so label-based and vocabulary-heavy and intellectually rigorous that can get some people kind of trapped in their heads. And that actually takes you out of your body, which is one of the things that we want going back foundationally. So that's just maybe a caution or if we're going to do this, if we are using a Laban movement analysis-based approach, for example, how are we making sure that our students are in their bodies and not just in their heads when they are floating and flicking and whatever else, right? If they know how to translate that into a feeling and an action and not just ideas. Any system, it's not that that's a problem with the system, because if you do it right, they don't. But it is one of the traps students can fall into. All right. But I like to put some of these together into a unit often that I call physical subtext. So in the same way that subtext is about what's the real meaning behind the words, underneath the words. So when you say, I'm fine, you may or may not mean I'm fine. But the problem is I can't think one set of words while speaking another. I can't think of one song while singing another tune. It just doesn't work. Whereas if it's an action or a movement or a quality, I can push while saying a word. I can pull while saying a word. I can float while saying a word. Those things I can do. So I like to put some of that Laban and Chekhov and Margolis stuff together into an assignment that I call the physical subtext unit. And I'm going to drop a video here and a little bit of B-roll so you can see what I'm talking about. Because sometimes what I'll do is I'll try and put these side by side together. And what you're looking at here, you've got what Michael Chekhov called the unveiled version, which is if you fully commit to these actions, the gestures, really get what it feels like in the body. So you have that in sort of a sense memory way. And then what he calls the veiled version. Again, it's not smaller. It's got to be just as intense in the core and in the body and in the spirit of the performer, but less flailing around with the arms, and you're not going to look quite as crazy. And it becomes the kind of thing that you could use in a straight play performance or an audition monologue or even a film close-up. And so by having people do it side by side, and I have to tweak the speed of the video sometimes to make that work, I can see, can they translate those tools into something they can use as a performer for their next audition monologue or for their scene. Sometimes I have to superimpose so that I can see two performers in two versions at the same time. And in this version, you can see the things they chose in their scored scripts that they submitted to me as well. So I can see, did you stick with what you did in your score? Can I see you figure out what that looks like to embody? And can you translate that into something that'll actually work in whatever genre of theater you happen to be working in? Now, some places, this can be a great way to help students understand how to take what might feel like an esoteric exercise of what does it mean to be water or be the air. How do you translate esoteric ideas like that into very specific pragmatic acting choices and tools? Other places, it can run the risk of being told to stay in my lane as a movement teacher. Again, what goes in which class? Because I teach both. And really that's a program level conversation to have. I do think students do need to be able to translate between what is movement and what is, between what they learn in movement or voice or any other class, into acting, because that's the goal, right? That's what we're training people to do. But at the same time, I also understand that there might be acting teachers who want control over how we do scene work in this program. And so that can be a healthy debate to have, I think, sometimes, provided you can have it civilly in your department, over who gets to do what in their classes, and how do we intentionally make sure that our students know how to use these specialty skills and translate them into the context of their native habitat, which is performing on stage or on screen, on camera work, whatever it might be. All right. So when you're trying to figure out what kind of curriculum is right for you, I do think we need to go back to that basic Stanislavski, what is your objective kind of thing? What do you want to empower your students? What do you want to be able to do 4 years down the road, 2 years down the road that you can't do now, right? Or to be able to do better than you can do now. And then we can start figuring out, all right, which of these units will best fit that? Which of these approaches give the instructor a tool to help us achieve that in instruction? And those are the kinds of conversations that I really wanted to be able to facilitate here today. There are plenty of ways in which the little skills of being able to act in a full face mask can translate to, Pedro Pascal being the Mandalorian, or being an animal can translate to, motion capture in Planet of the Apes. But a lot of the times it's a little bit more ambiguous about what exactly is this going to give us and how are we going to use it in our future careers as performers or as just, BA students who are interested in performance and the ways that can help inform our everyday life. So if you're looking for training, I encourage you to go back and ask these questions. Theater is constantly changing. It reflects culture, which is constantly changing. And really the only constant is these questions and these struggles. Sometimes educational theater is right there at the front, especially in terms of things like consent-based work. Sometimes it's a little bit behind because you get teachers who had a professional career and basically retired from that and are now teaching. And so the shows that they're doing and the information they're bringing and the textbooks they're using are, 20 years old because that was when they were in their heyday or when they had their training or when they last worked on this thing. So it's, it is something that is inconsistent and that there is no one right answer for, as with a lot of things in the arts. So I welcome those discussions myself. If this were a real live conference, we could go out in the lobby and have that conversation now. We could have some Q&A time. Because it's online, instead you'll have to find me online if you want to follow up, and I do welcome that conversation. You can find me at kevininouye.com. I'm not hard to find online. You can email me. I'm sure there's information in the bio down here if you want to check that out. But I'm happy to talk about any of this movement stuff or specific fields within that, like stage combat, for example. Sometimes you want certification classes because that's a value-added thing for your students. Sometimes you don't because then you teach to the test and you want more of a survey class. I mean, there are all sorts of things where it's just about fit, folks. It's about finding what you need and finding what will get you what you need. So I hope this helped with that in that process. And if what will help you get what you need is following up, I welcome that as well. All right. Thanks for listening.